I want to start by asking you a rhetorical question. My name is Wil Greer, Dr. Greer. I am an assistant professor in the College of Education and Educational Leadership. But I want to start by asking you a question. And the question is, why are you here? And you don't have to answer that. But while you're thinking about it, I want to tell you the story of a young man who grew up around here and went to school in some of our local schools. So here's a picture of the young man, one of our former students, when he was 1. Cute kid, right? He was born to a single mother, and his mother was single because she separated from his biological father. His biological father was often absent and was absent for the vast majority of the boy's life. He was also abusive. He was also unsupportive. But nonetheless, this is our former student at age 4. Nonetheless, his mother still did an excellent job in terms of teaching him how to read, making sure that they did math on a chalkboard that she bought. They played board games together. They laughed all the time. And actually, this was a really good time in the boy's life because at this time, when he was 4, his mother had married his stepfather. And his stepfather was a really nice, kind guy. They had a really nice life together for a time. Unfortunately, within about a year of this picture, the boy's life would fall into disarray. Both his mom and his stepfather would end up on crack cocaine. The boy would end up going to live with his grandmother, with one of his aunts, with 2 of his uncles. He would kind of come in and out of homelessness. He was almost a foster child. There were times when there was one instance where the boy was shot at by some men who were trying to kill his uncles. He often either had clothes that were not warm or that were not fitting. He was hungry often. This was a bit of a troublesome time. Nonetheless, before all of that, the boy loved school. The school where he went to, he had excellent teachers, and his teachers thought so highly of him, they actually moved him into a combo class where he could learn the curriculum of the kids who were in the grade ahead of him. So he loved school. He was it's fair to say he was a pretty star student. He was fairly a star student early on. It just was a period that didn't last long. Here the young man is again at age 7 or 8. This is actually one of the very few pictures that this young man has of this time in his life. During this time, he actually had gone on to live with his biological father. His biological father came and got him, and he lived with him at his grandparents' house. And so his biological father was a very interesting case because he wasn't a very nice man. He often ridiculed and chastised the boy for not having nice clothes, for just being generally disheveled, for not looking appropriate whenever he wanted to take the boy out. So this wasn't a very loving or warm time in the boy's life. However, there was a silver lining to living with his biological father at his grandparents' house. The boy was able to go to school every day. He was able to eat regularly, bathe regularly, and again at school, he had excellent relationships with his teachers. His teachers always made him feel like he had potential, like he was special, like there was something more that he could do with his life. So it was a tough time in some ways, but school was a constant, and he remembers that warmly. Here the young man is at age 10. So a very important event happens in our former student's life at this time. His mother, who you can kind of see, this is an old school picture, not taken on a great camera, not on a camera phone, this is in the 80s. But his mother, who you can kind of see behind him to his right, she miraculously turned her life around. She got clean, she got off drugs. She had divorced his previous stepfather, married another gentleman. This gentleman was awesome. He was very nice, he was loving, he was kind, he was affable. The boy's mother ended up getting a job as a secretary for a construction company, and his stepfather was a janitor. He actually worked and cleaned up the Fairview Ford car dealership in downtown San Bernardino, if any of you know where that is. And so his stepfather often took the boy with him to go clean up the dealership. So they would clean it up together at night, sometimes 11 o'clock at night, midnight. The boy would go with his stepfather, and they would go clean up this dealership. And his stepfather used to always tell him, if you don't stay serious and focused in school, you may end up being a janitor pushing this mop like me. And that was something that the boy always remembered. So here he is again at age 15. So this was an interesting time too. His mother, at this point, he's living in this room, in this house, for about 7 years of his final adolescent years, right? He spent the last 7 years of his childhood in this house. And so this was a very good time in one way because it was the most stability that the boy ever had, right? His mother cooked home-cooked meals regularly. They laughed, they joked, they played board games. This was a fun time. At the same time, the poverty. The boy in this house, there were regularly 7 to 10 people who were living with the boy, his mom, his stepfather. His mother and stepfather had 2 more kids, and there were always aunts, uncles, cousins, other folks who were coming, friends who were just coming by to live with the family. So it was a very interesting time. And you can kind of see it in this picture, but right to the left of the boy is his 2-year-old little brother. And then over on the floor to the left is a cousin who's living with them as well. And you may not be able to see it real well in this picture. So it was an interesting time, a lot of poverty though, and the boy just remembers this very, very clearly, very strongly in his mind. They had a lot of roaches. Occasionally they had mice. The boy was often teased at school for having holes in his shoes, for not having the cool clothes, and for just generally being unkempt, right? So it was sort of a tough time. The boy also, as he's adjusting, he's a teenager, he's in high school, he's also making some rash and bad decisions that could get him killed or wound up in prison. In fact, 3 of his best friends, within a few years of that picture, would all be murdered. They would all be killed. Jerome Payne, Edward Manning, Sean Kilpatrick, 3 young men that the boy remembers very fondly, very warmly, they would all be killed. And so one of the things that the boy always thinks about to this day is how he could have easily been in one of their places. One of the things that was different, one of the key factors that made a difference though, was the boy had some high school teachers that he connected with. He had high school teachers who told him that he was special, that he was smart, that he had potential, and they made him believe that he could actually go to college and do something worthy with his life. So he believed that. Now, some of you, many of you, have probably realized by now that the boy is me, right? So that was me back when I was a kid, and this is me when I'm 22 with my mother the day that I graduated from UCR, having gotten my bachelor's degree. So it's a very, very special time in my life. That day was still bittersweet, though, because that same year, my friend Sean, who you saw one of his obituaries, he passed away right before my graduation, so that was tough. And actually, 10 years from this photo, my mother, she would actually pass away. And so in addition to the traumas that I witnessed her face, that I saw her face in my lifetime, one of the things that I always think about is what additional traumas and hardships and horrors did she see as a young person that took so many years off of her life, right? I think about that all the time. And so this is me today, or more recently at least, with my wife, my kids. And so I ended up graduating from UCR with a bachelor's in sociology and ethnic studies. I came here to CSU SB to get my master's and my teaching credential. Went to Claremont Graduate University to get a PhD in urban educational leadership. Married a woman, a fine woman, I'll say. She is fine. And she actually has 2 doctorates. She has a law degree. She just finished her EDD here this past year. Our 2 kids, we've been able to give them all kinds of experiences that neither she nor I ever had, right? So it's in some ways, you know, you could look at me and say, man, well, look at you. You won. Success story, right? But I always think, what if some of those protective factors hadn't been there? What if instead of graduating from college, I ended up killed just like some of my best friends? What if the gangs caught me just as deeply, just as strongly as they caught them and I couldn't escape? What if I couldn't escape the poverty? What if I didn't have teachers in high school who made me feel like I could actually be somebody, like I could do something, like I could go to college? I was the first person in my family to go to and graduate from college, and at the time I had no idea how I would get there. What if I didn't have teachers who planted the seed? What if my mom had never gotten her life together? What if when I was in elementary, I didn't have teachers who stayed on me, who didn't let me play around, who had high expectations, who made sure that I did the reading, who made sure that I did the homework, who made learning fun? What if, in fact, I wasn't here at all? And so I think the only reason why I am here today is to kind of go back to that first question that I asked you. Why are you here? And so I think you're here for several reasons. One, I think you're here to be more than a college grad. All of you in this room are graduating, or maybe you've graduated or you're about to graduate. You could take your degree, you could go out into the corporate world, you could probably go figure out a way to make all kinds of money. But importantly, what you've decided to do is touch the future, build the future, shape it with your bare hands, be important and mean something in the life of a child. You're here to help kids use education as a social tool to build a dramatically better life. Kids who may not see it right now, they may not know what the future holds for them, but as long as they've got you, as long as you put your arms around them and you say to them, streets, gangs, hoods, poverty, drugs, you can't have this child because I've got this child. This child is with me. This child is in my class. I'm gonna stand in the gap. I'm gonna make sure that this child is protected. I see something special in this boy, or I see something special in this girl. I'm gonna make sure she knows it. I'm gonna make sure that she uses that to improve her life. You're here to empathize with children who maybe don't have enough food to eat, who may be transient, who may go through chronic and temporary bouts of homelessness. Kids who maybe have seen their mothers on drugs, or their fathers not be there, or their brothers get shot, or their uncles go off to jail. You're there to empathize with those kids and let them know that somebody, some adult in their life loves them and gives a darn. You're there to make reading cool and knowing math at grade level cool. You're there to make sure that reading and math and academics and the curriculum is fun and exciting and rewarding, and to make kids feel like, I don't want to miss her class because it's bomb. I don't want to miss his class because it's fun. I don't want to miss that class because it's lit. I want to make sure I'm there because we always learn stuff that's important to me. We always learn stuff that helps me improve the quality of my life. I have a bond with my teacher. I can't miss out on that, man. I can't ditch today. I got to be there. You're here for that reason. But most importantly, you are here to pay it forward for your ancestors. All of you in this room, you are somebody's prayer. You're somebody's dream. You're somebody's wish. You're somebody's most positive thought. There's somebody in your family who maybe had to work hard to get here. Maybe they had to migrate over here against all odds. They didn't know what the future would hold, but they dreamt, they hoped that their children's children's children would maybe have the opportunity to sit in this seat, to graduate from a university, to do something better with their life. Maybe you have ancestors who came over here in the bottom of ships, and they prayed and they fought, but they were brave enough and strong enough and faithful enough to not give up, to not quit, to not die. And they prayed that you would be here one day, that you would be in this position. You are here to pay it forward because there were people who loved you, and even though you didn't see their struggle, they did. And if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be here. So you are here to matter in the life of a child, and we thank you for that.